BYU football game week rolls on as the Cougars get set to take on the Arizona State Sun Devils in a top 25 clash. First visit to Tempe for BYU football since 1997. Kalani Sitake was a running back for BYU at that time. And to preview this Big 12 clash, joining me now is Jeremy Schnell, host of the State of the Sun Devils podcast on ArizonaSports.com. Follow him on X at Jeremy Schnell and AZ Sports on X as well. Jeremy, excited to do this with you. I'm excited that this is a conference game once again, a historic series between these two programs, and I think this should be a lot of fun on Saturday.
Oh, yeah, for sure. A lot of people are saying that this is the biggest game in Tempe since 2014. It's been a long time for ASU coming, and obviously 2 straight years of 3 wins. It's a lot different now here in Tempe.
It's an exciting time, and I thought Kalani highlighted it in a great way, Kalani Sitake, about how there's a lot of connectivity between BYU and Arizona State because the media didn't believe in these two programs coming into the year. We touched base with each other at Big 12 Media Days, and at that time, both programs, BYU and ASU, had such low expectations, and to be in this spot in late November, it's pretty exciting. And I'm curious, what was your reaction when Arizona State had that breakthrough win last week in Manhattan at Kansas State?
Just kind of I can't believe this is happening, but I can believe it at the same time. Kenny Dillingham has come in here and really changed the culture of this program. And you saw it a little bit last season with the guys buying in. He said a lot, if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here. A lot of the guys bought in. Some of the guys stayed. Some of the guys left. And this group just seems like they're coming together at the right time. Listen, the Kansas State game was incredible. 24-14. They were up 21-0 at half. Some special teams issues, as Kansas State has had in the past 2 games, reared its old head. But ASU just capitalized on missed opportunities by Kansas State. Second play of the game was an interception for ASU. Last week was just incredible for ASU.
Talking with Jeremy Schnell, host of the State of the Sun Devils podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast to hear insight on Arizona State. And I'm curious, what's been your impressions of Sam Leavitt? I know a lot of BYU people are very intrigued by him because, well, one, BYU recruited him in the portal cycle this past winter, but 2, his dad was a former BYU linebacker back in the Ty Detmer days. Was this kind of always the thought when Arizona State got him from Michigan State that he could come in and be QB1 right away?
I know that Kenny Dillingham said that, after Jaden Rashada left in, let's see, when did he leave? March or something like that, and then he ended up going to Georgia. Kenny Dillingham said that it was Sam Leavitt's job at that point. Now, he brought in Jeff Sims, and there was a kind of QB competition, but we kind of knew at some point in the middle of the summer that Sam Leavitt was going to be the guy. When he took over, redshirt freshman issues here and there between, the first 5 games. He got hurt before the Cincinnati game, didn't play in that one. But, 17 touchdowns, almost 2,000 yards on the season. You couldn't have expected this from a redshirt freshman coming in, but he's just proved a lot of people wrong and also just outweighed our expectations on what we thought he was going to be this season.
And one of his top targets, Jordan Tyson, huge performance last week at K-State. He's the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week. What makes him so dynamic? Because his name doesn't get discussed as much. We hear a lot about Cam Scadaboo, and I'll get your thoughts on him a little bit later. But tell me a little bit more about Jordan Tyson.
With Tyson, there's some ups and downs with his game. Sometimes you'll see a little bit of, drop passes, ran the wrong route. But when it's good, it's really good. You might remember last year before he entered the portal, he was at Colorado. And everybody was raving about him in the spring game. He went off in the spring game for Colorado. Then he entered the portal, and everybody's like, what's going on? He came to ASU. Had an okay season here at ASU, didn't play the first 4 games, I believe. But then this year, he's really taken that step up. And what everybody's saying here in Arizona is that he's young too, right? This tandem between Sam Leavitt and Jordan Tyson is going to be here for at least a couple more years. And that's what's very exciting about this team.
Talk with Jeremy Schnell. BYU and Arizona State coming up on Saturday, 1:30 kick. We'll have the call on KSL News Radio. Extended pregame begins at 11 a.m. here. And Jeremy, I'm curious about where Cam Scadaboo ranks in the all-time great running backs at ASU. And I bring this up because when I think of BYU Arizona State, I think of, well, one, the meeting most recently in 2021. That was a great game with so much talent on the field. 1998, these two programs met, and I think J.R. Redmond was an absolute stud. I loved him growing up when I saw that game. I'm curious, where does Scadaboo rank among the all-time greats at ASU?
It's interesting because he kind of came out of nowhere, right? He was really good at Sacramento State, but he came in and you're like, okay, maybe he'll compete for some time in the running back position. He just kind of took over that position. This year he's been insane. He missed one game due to injury, and he's already over 1,000 yards. He's got a bunch of touchdowns, but he's also really good in the receiving game. You got to watch out for him in the receiving game. He had a game just a couple weeks ago where he had 100 yards rushing and 100 yards receiving. He's really good at both of those things. Now, all time, it's been really good at running back for ASU recently. You got guys like Valade, but then you go back to a guy like Rashad White, Eno Benjamin. You got a lot of other guys that have been really good recently. And you got to really look at the running backs coach here at ASU. Sean Aguano has been insane as a really good running backs coach at ASU. I say he's got to be studied in a lab for how good he's been about turning these running backs into absolute studs. He was the interim coach when Herm Edwards got let go a couple of years ago. Didn't go the way ASU thought it should go at the end of that season and during that season. But what he does is he makes these guys into studs, and I think he's got to be absolutely given a lot of credit for what Cam Scadaboo has done.
Any personnel that you're monitoring this week as far as availability goes for ASU that are two deep guys that are of note that are questionable or game time decisions potentially this week?
No, I mean, they're pretty healthy right now. Jake Smith, he's a slot receiver. Him and Milquan Stovall kind of split time at that position. He didn't play on Saturday. He doesn't play a huge role in the offense, so it's not something that they're going to miss exponentially if he doesn't go. He was Kenny Dillingham spoke to the media yesterday. He said that he's questionable to doubtful. That's a tag that he's given a lot of players this season. When Cam Scadaboo didn't go a couple weeks ago against when Cam Scadaboo didn't go against UCF, he had that questionable to doubtful tag all throughout the week. So look for Smith probably not play this week. I don't want to, put words into Kenny Dillingham's mouth, but that's not a position that, we're going to miss him too much. He's very good, very fast. He's been up and down this season for sure.
You bring up Kenny Dillingham, and he's always got energy. I've enjoyed kind of watching from afar his weekly media availabilities and press conferences. I feel like he's just a lot of energy. He's even had some moments where after losses where he's calling out special teams. Been kind of he's a fun personality, it seems like. He talked about activating the Valley for this game. Are you getting that sense that this area, Phoenix, the market way better than me? Are they buying into this Sun Devil squad? Is this going to be a electric atmosphere on Saturday afternoon?
It's for sure the hottest ticket in town, and it's top 5 this weekend of games on the slate, obviously. It's already sold out. It's been sold out before the games on Saturday, this past Saturday. It's, a lot of people are buying in. Listen, I take care of our video department here. A couple of us do, but I do a lot of video work here at Arizona Sports, and we've had more Arizona State videos these past 2 weeks, than we've had, I want to say, in the past couple of years outside of our podcast, of course, that you can see on YouTube. But it's just been incredible, the support that this team is getting, more NIL support as well. I know Kenny Dillingham said during his press conference yesterday that he wants to make sure that if you're not going to the game, that your tickets go to ASU fans, because, of course, BYU has great support here in the Valley, and it's not too far of a hop on a jet to get down here. But I think it's going to be a fantastic atmosphere, whether you're wearing blue or maroon and gold.
How do you think Arizona State handles the spotlight? Because this is kind of a new place for them, as we saw with College Game Day last week. Desmond Howard's acting like, why are we picking this game? It's like, this is two 7-2 football teams still in the Big 12 title race, and he's discrediting it. How do you think ASU handles now being in a big spotlight?
They've done well this year in the big games that they've played. Back when Utah was still ranked, they beat Utah here in Tempe, and then they went on the road last week. A lot of questions on could this team go into Kansas State, Manhattan at night, very good atmosphere, 50,000 screaming fans, and get the job done. And they did. So I think that was a big test moving forward. Can this team get it done? I mean, they've shown it a couple times this year in games that maybe teams, maybe people didn't think that ASU had a chance. They were able to pull out wins. And, last week they stomped Kansas State in the first half. So we'll see if they get off to a hot start. And if they do get off to a hot start, that crowd will be rocking for sure.
Jeremy, I'm curious, ASU being at 8-2, what's the weakness of this team, or still kind of the area that makes you think, oh, this could be an area where BYU could have an advantage over Arizona State potentially? What would you say is that area for the Sun Devils right now?
If you asked me this question last week, I would have said the secondary. But last week, the secondary was fantastic. 2 interceptions, a forced fumble by Shamari Simmons. Listen to this Shamari Simmons' game. He had a forced fumble, a deflection that led to an interception, and the game-sealing interception at the end of the game. He's playing slot corner now. He can play outside as well. They got a couple guys that were young, and you didn't really know what you were going to expect from them this year, and they've really shown out. Now the safeties are really good, X Alford and Ghost Rouser as well. They're very good as well, but it really has been the secondary where you're like, I don't know about them this year, and they've kind of shown up in big time scenarios. But I want to say the run game as well. Listen, the run defense as well. UCF went absolutely off on the run game 2 weeks ago, and that was a concern going into Kansas State. Now, they were able to hold Kansas State pretty in check throughout the whole game, and I think that, that's somewhere that BYU might be able to get a few extra yards if they, play the play action game. It could be difficult for ASU to stop in terms of if BYU gets the run game going, the play action game could be lethal for BYU this week.
Last thing for you, Jeremy, and I appreciate all your time doing this and hopping on with me here to break this down. I got to ask, how much is Arizona State enjoying the Big 12? And this question kind of comes from, I think, back to last August or last year in August when this move happened. And I think the feeling was that Utah and Arizona State were the two schools that just weren't on board with making this move. And, we've seen Mark Harlan, Utah AD, his comments after the BYU game a few weeks back. It kind of made it clear that he's not a big fan of the Big 12, you could say. How's ASU embracing it now? Are they getting more on board with this move and kind of moving into this new era in the Big 12 rather than the Pac?
That's an interesting question because it's gone so well. I don't think anybody's had time to complain about anything, right? I think everything's been great. The volleyball team is doing fantastic in the Big 12 right now, only 2 losses all season. And now, the basketball teams are just getting started. But in terms of football, obviously, it's something new, right? You're seeing new opponents. You're going to new places. They've played at Oklahoma State a couple of years ago as well, so they have that familiarity there. But playing in new places, going to new places. I talked with Graham Rossini earlier in the season, the athletic director here at Arizona State, and he said just the camaraderie between all of the athletic directors within the Big 12 is really great, and to be able to pull ideas from each of these schools to understand what they're doing right, what their game days look like. It's very beneficial to ASU. They've, seen the same schools for so long. Now to be able to see a new vision and new teams, new places, I think that's going to be beneficial for the long run for ASU.
He's Jeremy Schnell. You can follow his work at arizonasports.com. He's the host of State of the Sun Devils podcast. Again, check him out on arizonasports.com and get his podcast wherever you get your podcast. Jeremy, appreciate the time and looking forward to Saturday. This should be a fun one.
Yep, I hope to see you there.